Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We're here in Brookshire County at our Salt Lake City hub, and in this video, we'll be setting up another hub like this out near Roswell. But before we get to that, we'll be doing some other smaller projects around the map, such as cleaning up some line rates that fuel this hub, as well as finishing our passenger connection from Roswell, connecting that up to Lincoln as well. And so I did a little bit of line rate tweaking between videos here, just because some of our lines, such as for our food processing plant, it would have taken a while for us to iron out the line rates with how long it takes to trucks to move, but I think we're close enough now to where we can start to fine-tune things like that and make sure we're fully supplying everything that we need. Alright, so let's start out with our food processing plant here, and I just went through and checked our cities. Overall, we need about 600 food being produced here, which we can actually see we're just about that number, which means our line rates coming in here should be around 1,200, since that does get reduced because it takes 2 grain to make 1 food. But we can see this line that we set up here is operating at a rate of 409. This one coming from this farm is operating at a rate of 390. And then this one over here that we've always had running is at a rate of 303. So we are providing pretty much exactly the amount that we need here. And now one thing we do have to start maybe thinking about or worrying about is traffic building up on this road. This intersection specifically could become prone to backing up if we do end up connecting this third farm by trucks. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. If things continue to expand and we have to add another farm, we'll probably have to upgrade this road and maybe think about how to make traffic more efficient coming into here. But I think for now we're okay, especially since we're splitting that with this boat line, which should be taking a good amount of food back into the city of Portland. And so we actually did just unlock a new truck here, the Benz Tarpaulin truck. Now it doesn't fit the American theme that we've been going with, but these early trucks I think are all pretty easily able to be grouped together in terms of their look and style. So we'll probably switch these lines over to this truck since it's considerably faster than the steam tarpaulin truck that we're using. It's almost 10 miles an hour faster. It only carries 1 extra cargo capacity, but I think switching that over more specifically for these 2 lines will save us a lot of money and the worry that we just had of backing up at this intersection here. Alright, so now we can see these trucks have been upgraded and their line rates are now set back to 400. I'm not sure if that really has made this traffic situation much better, but we'll keep an eye on it and make sure that we don't end up giving ourselves any sort of gridlock in this area, as it seems like we have a lot of trucks piling up here, but that could just be because we just recently upgraded and they need to spread out across the line. Alright, so things are actually looking pretty good here, so we can continue to move on from this. I think we will still keep this boat line for now, but we will put it on our list of projects to phase this out now that we have better trucks, and we can probably save making a more efficient route coming into here. Put that on our list of future projects coming up here pretty shortly. But then moving on down that line, coming into Portland here, we'll want to make sure Portland's getting all the food it needs. So I believe our truck stop is still able to cover most, if not all of the food, which it looks like it is. So really this is probably just a truck issue. We're sitting at a rate of 155 on our trucks. These we can also probably replace with the Benz Tarpaulin trucks. That'll get us up to 180, which we'll duplicate that once or twice, get that close to 200, because I know we don't have every food building in our drop-off radius, so we won't need to fully fill out that 200 need in Portland. And so then looking at Salt Lake City needs just about 300 food, and Houston needs almost 100. So adding that together, this boat line should be at about 400, which we already determined it has. So this boat line isn't a bottleneck at all. Let's find a food truck for Salt Lake City. And this is at a rate of 288, which I believe matches exactly what the city needs. However, I don't know if our one truck stop is covering all of the food in the city. So I think it's about time we split this up. And so we'll get a food drop off here for this side of the city. And then we can get another one, I suppose, all the way out on this street. Or maybe we'll get it a little bit closer, because we do want it to cover as much as possible, but we don't want to put it on this same street as our bus line, since that might cause some issues. However, I'm not sure if there's a better location for it, so let's get this place right here. It'll be on the other end of the street from our bus stop, so hopefully it won't get in too much of the way. But now what we can do is split up this food line. And now this is where things are going to get a little bit messy in terms of line rates, because now we're not entirely sure how much food we're dropping off here. I suppose what we could do is encompass this all in one line, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily what we want to do. We might keep this two separate lines and figure out what to do from there. And so what that means is we'll probably have to cut down on our vehicles here. So we'll probably want this down to a rate closer to maybe 150. So let's sell 9 vehicles here. I'm okay with 160. That's just in case if we end up going over, that should do just fine. And then we'll get a couple more trucks, and that will then go to our other stop, which we will then make sure is loading only food, and then of course unloading it in the city. Now one thing I want to do is keep those trucks off of our main tram line, as those trucks will slow down our trams. So I think we're going to have it come up this street, as we currently have no lines going up that way. So we'll set up a waypoint here, which I believe should easily reroute this as soon as we add it in here. And that looks like it'll have no issues. We should actually have another one going the other way, so on the return trip we can also tell them to come back down this street so that they're not blocking our trams on the return trip. And so we'll leave those trucks to slowly spread out throughout Salt Lake City. If it is easier and it works to just have one line connecting these two stops, let me know in the comments, because that's something I haven't tested out at all. So maybe I'll try it out on my own as well and see if that works, but if any of you guys know, that would be much appreciated. And then the last line I looked at between videos was our fuel line, as this one needed a much needed upgrade. You can see some of it's still getting ironed out here as our boats are starting to queue up at the oil refinery. However, it might be worth it to add an extra dock so that we can have pretty much one for each line. So we'll come in here. I believe this is the one that we'll want to be on that one, and then that way they're not fighting each other for an open port here at the oil refinery. And so just to double check our numbers, Houston needs 250 about, Salt Lake City needs about 50 itself, and then Portland will also round that up to 50. So I believe that gets us to about 350, which would be the rate of fuel that we would need coming in. So you can see here, this boat line should be able to handle that to some degree. Now we have our truck line set up to serve 350 here, as it's moving oil at a rate of 700. And this is a line that I think would also greatly benefit from upgraded trucks. So we'll sell a couple of these vehicles and then we'll upgrade them and get our line rate back to around the 700 it was at before. And then what we still need to do is our boat rate here. This needs to also be up at 700, since it needs to take that oil to the oil refinery at that rate, where then it gets reduced down to 2 crude oil to 1 oil. So then this ship needs to be moving at a rate of 350, which it is. So really all it is this boat line here. And unfortunately, I don't think we have... We actually do have better boats. So let's replace all these and see where this gets us to. That gets us to about 828, which is a little bit over what we want. 776 is still over what we want. I think 725 is where we'll stay, because I think if we go down one more, we'll get under 600. So 14 vehicles on this line isn't terrible. I think I might want to look for larger ships on the Steam Workshop, just so that we don't have this just massive line of boats going back and forth between these two ports. But I think for now this is fine. And we should start to see that trickle through the rest of our lines and hopefully eventually make its way into Houston here. Alright, so now that all of our line rates having to do with this Salt Lake City hub is checked and done through. Actually, we haven't taken a look at our tools line. So let's quickly check this, and then I believe we should be just fine on tools. Actually, we're severely under-delivering on tools, as Houston needs almost 400. So let's actually come through and we'll deal with that. So I think we want this at about a rate of 500 coming in here. So let's start by working backwards here. That would have to do this boat line, which of course is bringing logs over. So that 500 times 2, this line rate needs to be up closer to 1,000. Let's see if we have better boats available to us. And it appears like we don't, so this Klondike boat is our best option for now. So we'll duplicate that. That gets our line rate up to 1,000. And then what we need to figure out is if we're bringing enough logs to this port to supply that 1,000 rate. And so we're definitely not bringing in enough logs here. So first thing we'll do is just upgrade all these vehicles, and thankfully we have this truck with side stakes, which actually has slightly higher capacity. So hopefully if we do this for each one of our truck lines here, that might get us up pretty close to those numbers. Alright, so now all of these lines, I've tried to get them as close to 333 as I could, so that should even out now to about 1,000 logs coming into here. Hopefully we're able to keep up with that. It looks like we'll be just fine, as our boats will slowly work their way through it. But now what that should mean is eventually we'll see this number pretty much double up to close to 500. And we'll want to make sure that we're covering that. So here in Portland, they need tools at about a rate of 40. So let's duplicate this amount a few times until we're up close to 40 or 50. So those look good there. Coming over to Salt Lake City, they need about 70 tools. Let's see what our current tools rate is. So maybe we'll get one more truck on that line, and that should cover Salt Lake City. And then lastly, Houston, which is the big one, almost 400. This is going to be another one where we're going to have to probably split this. So I believe this is where we're dropping tools off. So yeah, we're dropping tools off at this stop. And I'm actually wondering if maybe we could fit most or all of the tools in one stop, which I think we will do until we can get a little bit better of a system going for doing multiple stops. But we'll do that for now. I believe that automatically switched over. These are at a rate of 249, which will not work for us. We'll want that switched up, which will probably greatly increase our line rate. And so after selling a few of those, hopefully they will slowly sort themselves out, and then hopefully we won't have any traffic issues, as it seems like we already have trucks piling up on this street. But we should be good in Houston then, once this is all done and figured out. Alright, now the last thing I want to do in this area is upgrade our passenger train running between Houston, Salt Lake City, and Portland, as all three of these stations have tons of people waiting. So I think this is just we're going to keep the two trains that we have, but we're going to very heavily revamp the trains that are running on this line. Alright, so the train that we're going to run for this line is going to be very similar in makeup to the train that's running from Pittsburgh to Roswell. So it's this E6 Atlantic engine with the top speed of 115 miles an hour, with 6 of these Pennsylvania Railroad P70 coach cars. So that gets us to a capacity of 133, which is just over what we currently have. However, we should be able to get to top speed a little bit quicker than these trains. I'm not sure if we'll reach the full top speed between stations. We'll just have to keep an eye on it, but we should be able to reach much higher speeds and be able to move much quicker between cities than we were able to before. Alright, so now after those updates, that should be it for this area of the map. Let's now head over to Roswell, where we're going to connect up the other end of our passenger line and get the beginnings of a cargo hub set up over there. And so over here near Roswell, we currently have this train set up, which has been doing very well for us in terms of money. We can see just how much that's getting us every period. So there's definitely potential in completing this loop from Roswell. Now, figuring out how we're going to do that's going to be a little tricky, as we have a few options. We could either choose to share track with this tools line, which might be too long of a stretch to share since these trains don't go particularly too fast. So maybe we'll just sort of bump up next to them until we have to split off and get into Lincoln. But let's get into that, and we'll be back after we have these tracks connected. Alright, and so now we have our new track set up all the way out to Lincoln, and this line actually ended up being a lot more simple than I imagined. Really all we had to do is rework this corner so that it was a little more shallow, so we don't have to slow down quite as much, and then the rest just ended up being a tunnel that pops out right about here all the way on the Lincoln end of it. So I'm pretty happy with how this line ended up, and I'm almost tempted to just have our Pittsburgh to Roswell line just shoot back out to Lincoln, and then we'll just get a second train running on that line. Let's just see what the demand is like. So on the Pittsburgh end of it, there's definitely a good amount of demand, so I'm wondering if maybe we edit this vehicle, we add another car to it, and then we duplicate it. And then again, we just come from Roswell, connect up to Lincoln, and then do the same thing in reverse. And so one thing we'll have to monitor is just make sure that this hill isn't too much for this train now. So we'll just make sure it's able to go up and over, and then if it can make it up this hill, everything else should be just fine, as Lincoln to Roswell is almost entirely flat. So it looks like this train's handling it no problem. So that's pretty good to see. I think we might get a third train just to help out with all the demand again. But I have a feeling this line's going to do very well for us as time goes on. Alright, so now our line's running pretty well. One thing that we came across was here in Lincoln, for some reason people were taking our line to Roswell, then to Pittsburgh, to get from Lincoln to Pittsburgh. And we knew that because you can hover over the passenger here, and you can see the split for the destinations. So now, obviously, this is slowly shifting more towards people wanting to go to Roswell instead of just to Pittsburgh. But before we did some adjusting, those numbers were actually flipped, and the majority of people wanted to go to Pittsburgh instead of Roswell, while taking this line all the way out to Roswell instead of the direct line that we had. So we ended up having to upgrade this train to essentially match the speed as our other line, since I think because our other train going directly from Lincoln to Pittsburgh was a slower train, it could have actually ended up being faster to take the faster train the longer route. So now all these numbers should be starting to even out, and we'll start to get a feel for the true potential we have on this line. You can see here we're already starting to see that here with this spike. We'll just let this run and see how everything shakes out. And so now we're going to tackle getting a hub set up across the bay from Roswell. Now, I think it's going to end up being somewhere in this area, probably somewhere close to this road. And I think we're going to do that because this is a pretty central location to a lot of the rest of the towns that aren't connected up to our other hub. And also, all this flat space gives us plenty of room to expand and set up a lot of lines. So we're also centralized in a lot of our resources. So we do have our tools coming in over here, or we could even reroute this to stop in at the hub if we wanted to. We have our machines line over here, which we'll have to bring in probably by train instead of boat at some point. And then we have our construction materials line over here, which we could somehow figure out a way to get that in here. But this location's in the middle of a lot of different resources and a lot of different cities, which I think makes it a pretty ideal location for something like this. And so we're going to build out everything that we'll need here. I don't think we will set up any lines yet, just because doing all of that is pretty much a whole video's worth of work. But we will get all of our stations set up, our ports, our truck stations, everything like that set up here, and we'll pretty much be ready to get it activated as soon as we need it. So with that, let's get into building it, and we'll be back once we're done with all of that. Alright, and so I think this is going to be good enough for now. We have the pretty much bare bones of what a cargo hub would be. We have our large train station over here. We have multiple truck stops throughout the area to disperse truck traffic if we do a ton of drop-offs or pickups. And then we have a large port area over here, which hopefully we have more than enough space for all of the boats that would be coming in and out of this area. And so we did do some detailing here with this building. I think I'm going to leave this area a little bit more open and bare bones until we have a more clearer vision of what we want here. This seemed pretty easy and obvious, a nice warehouse building with some spaces for trucks to come in and out, and then parking for workers in this warehouse. So this side was a little bit easier to detail than this side, but I think I want to let our routes and lines develop before we get into detailing too much of what we want this area to look like. And so eventually, again, once we do start setting up this hub, we do have tools right here, construction materials out by Lincoln, and then right next to Pittsburgh we have food and machines. So maybe we can think to maybe get those on one train whenever we start bringing those in. But I think this is a pretty good starting point for us. And then in the next few videos we can start to connect up those lines and the cities to this hub. And so now I think that's going to be it for a lot of the larger development in this video. I think I want to take a step back and look at some statistics and analytics that we haven't really taken a look at in quite a while, just to sort of get a sense of a feel of where we're at the moment in terms of our map development. And so checking in on our capital of Houston, if we take a look at the chart here, this has really started to explode in growth since we set up that hub. It seems like it might be starting to equalize and come down from that high, but we can see it is at its target population, so really the limiting factor is the amount of resources coming into this area. But I think overall we're handling most of it pretty well. And then let's take a look at all of our cities. So our next largest city is Salt Lake City. This makes sense as that's part of the 3 cities we've been really pushing hard towards developing. And we also really expanded the city grid recently to allow it to fill that out. So I think Salt Lake City is in a very good position. And now if we take a look at the bottom here, Lincoln, which of course Lincoln's a city that we intend to be smaller, but I think it does need some attention. I think we'll spend a good bit of the next video giving some attention to these smaller cities that we haven't really looked at too much. But we have Lincoln here, and then Allentown, which I actually wanted to be one of our larger cities on the map, is sitting at our second largest city. I think a lot of that just has to do with the resources it's getting, the connections that are made. So once we get that cargo hub up and running, maybe prioritizing getting resources to Allentown could be pretty good for us in the future. And then taking a look at our finances and other statistics here, that has really just exploded since in the last few videos since we started to get some larger lines going. You can see we're making about $25 million in profit every financial period. We do have some costs coming out on, I suppose that's our roads and infrastructure costs. But overall, all 3 of our separate modes of transportation are making us money between our roads, our trains, and our boats. We can see this in a different light here if we look at our finances over the last 50 financial periods. So you can see sort of where we started to turn things around back in 1910. You can see that reflected here too, as our money has pretty much just shot straight up since then. Some of our track developments. So you can see the development of our trains going through. And now here's our growth overall as a map. So you can see this is also starting to explode, but that's probably largely due to Houston and Salt Lake City populations going up. But that trend, of course, will just continue as we connect more things together. And then looking at our headquarters and other random statistics here, we're almost at $1 billion in total for all of our assets combined. So that's a pretty exciting milestone that we're coming up on soon. We have over 1,000 road vehicles and less than 100 of every other vehicle on the map. You can see some other stuff such as top speed, our oldest vehicle being 62 years. And then all the way at the bottom here, the total amounts of cargo and passengers that we've been able to transport so far throughout this series. And so I think with that, we're going to take a look at the few things we've done in this video, and then when we come back, we'll just double check and make sure the lines that we've added are working well, and then we'll come through and talk about some of our future projects. Alright, so now that we're back, we can talk about how our lines are looking. So I guess since we're over here by Roswell, let's take a look at our new passenger connection and this line. It looks to be doing pretty well. It's seemed to have fallen into a rhythm. It does seem to be making about as much money as it was before, so nothing too groundbreaking, just sort of continuing what we've already known pretty much. It looks like the trains are leaving close to full in all directions. Demand in Lincoln's a little low. Pittsburgh still has plenty of demand for that line. And then back in Roswell, I believe we just had a train pickup, but Roswell doesn't have too many people there. However, the train that did leave is over halfway full, so I think we're okay. Maybe it's something to keep an eye out on, but of course, as cities grow, demand grows, so those lines will only become more and more in demand as time goes on. And now taking a look at our first our tools line, since that's sort of where we're at right now. We do have this up producing around the 500 rate. It actually looks like we might need to upgrade this train that's taking the tools to our Salt Lake City hub, as it seems like that's not moving enough tools. We have a bunch waiting here. This river's, again, very full because of all the boats that are required to get us to that rate for the tools, but this seems to be doing very well. You can see that increase here in the charts. It looks like they're all moving things at maximum capacity, so that's a good sign to see. And then while we're here, our food processing plant has finally caught up and we're now producing the 600 food that we needed. It does look like we're starting to push that limit again, so we might have to get this fourth farm involved soon. So maybe when we unlock the next tier of trucks, we'll finally convert all of these to just shipping with trucks to the food processing plant. But that's something in the near future, not necessarily next episode type of project. Our hub here seems to be doing very well now that resources have finally been able to make their way through all of our lines. It looks like we have a good amount of tools waiting and a good amount of food waiting. Salt Lake City is now almost receiving all of its food, so that's good to see. It looks like it did something a little weird up here, but we'll come through and fix that when we get around to adjusting our city grids. And then lastly, we have our fuel line out by Houston. If we double check the rate here, we're still a little above there, but I think that's fine. Being a little over is better than being a little under. Same with these boats. We ended up being a little high on those, so maybe we just sell one or two, and those will eventually even out to a more reasonable line rate. We don't want things too out of line with each other, or else it's just going to be wasted money and lower efficiency. But if we can keep this line down closer to 700-ish, that'll be much better. But it seems like Houston's getting a lot of the tools and fuel that it needs. Again, I think one of the first things we're going to have to do next video is increase the amount of tools that we're bringing in from the tools factory. So getting into our future projects, that'll probably be one of the first things we do. And then coming over to this cargo hub, I want to start connecting lines to this probably in the next video. Maybe not everything, as getting construction materials here might be a little tricky. We could always ship them from all the way out by Allentown, and maybe there's a good opportunity to have a train go both ways between Allentown and the cargo hub. So maybe that's actually an option. Again, getting resources into Roswell, that might be something that we can pretty easily set up once we connect a line or two to this cargo hub. And then I want to come through and give some attention to some of these smaller cities that we haven't looked at in a while. We can see Lincoln starting to grow up the hill, so maybe we come through and start to control how it does that so that it looks nice, it runs nice, because some of these intersections are just completely inefficient with how they're laid out. So we'll come through and do that in the next video as well. And then far off into the future, I think I want to start thinking about getting a goods factory somewhere on the map. I know we have the goods factory by Houston, but we also have all this open space here by Tacoma we might be able to use, and all this open space out by Roswell that we could probably use to get a goods factory up and running. It doesn't necessarily have to follow the industries that are already on the map, since we do have the ability to place our own, but I think using these existing industries to maybe inform our location of our goods factory might be sort of a fun and challenging idea for us to do. So that'll be something that'll start to think about in the background as we go through the next couple of videos. However, I think with that, that's going to be all for this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.